Here's something strange about human nature. Some of the most loving, warm, deeply feeling people you will ever meet are also the ones most likely to disappear from your life without warning. No argument, no goodbye, no explanation. One day they're there, and then, quietly, they're not. Most people assume this is coldness, cruelty even, but psychology tells a completely different story. What looks like someone shutting the world out is often someone finally choosing to survive it. Think about someone you know who did this. Maybe they were the one who always showed up, the friend who remembered everything, who checked in without being asked, who made everyone around them feel genuinely seen. And then one day, without drama, without a final confrontation, they were simply gone. Or maybe that person is you. You didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because caring had become something that was slowly hollowing you out. From the inside, you stayed longer than most people would have. You adjusted, forgave, swallowed your own hurt, kept showing up until one quiet moment when you realized you had nothing left to give and no one had noticed. That realization doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives like an exhale, like your entire nervous system finally saying, enough. And what the people left behind rarely understand is this: your silence was never about them as much as it was about your own survival. From a psychological perspective, this pattern has a specific origin, and it almost never begins in adulthood. Psychologists have noticed that people who disengage completely from relationships, cutting contact cleanly and permanently, often grew up in environments where emotional attunement was inconsistent, where love felt conditional, where expressing a need was met with dismissal, guilt, or emotional withdrawal from the very people who were supposed to provide safety. Children in these environments adapt. They develop what researchers call people-pleasing conditioning, a deeply ingrained belief that their value to others depends on how little they ask for and how much they provide. They become the help earth, the fix earth, the ones who hold everyone else together. This connects directly to what attachment theorists call the anxious avoidant dynamic. These individuals desperately want deep connection. They feel everything intensely, but they've learned through painful repetition that needing people leads to disappointment. So they give without asking. They love without showing it costs them anything, until the cost becomes unbearable. And when emotional burnout finally sets in, and research suggests it always does, eventually, the response is rarely anger. For people wired this way, it's withdrawal, clean, total, and deeply misunderstood by everyone watching from the outside. Inside the mind of someone cutting everyone off, it doesn't feel like a choice at first. It feels like a slow dawning, a pattern becoming visible that you can no longer unsee. You start noticing the dynamic with a kind of painful clarity. Who calls first? Who gives more? Whose feelings get centered in every conversation? And once you see it, you cannot return to the comfortable numbness of pretending it isn't there. There is grief in this moment. That part often gets missed entirely. People assume the one who goes quiet has found peace, but most of the time, they are mourning the relationship they believed it could become, the version of themselves that kept trying, the years spent hoping someone would finally show up for them. the way they always showed up for everyone else. The silence isn't emptiness. It's someone sitting alone with the weight of a love that was never properly returned, and finally deciding that weight is no longer theirs to carry. Here's what most people completely misread about this behavior. They assume the person who disappears is impulsive, unstable, someone who gives up easily. But here's the part no one talks about. These are almost always the people who held on the longest. They don't leave at the first sign of difficulty. They are, by nature, deeply loyal, extraordinarily patient. They absorb conflict, swallow resentment, give people the benefit of the doubt long past the point where most others would have walked away. Which means by the time they actually go, by the time the silence becomes permanent, they have already tried everything else. They communicated, they hoped, they adjusted themselves in small, invisible ways trying to make the connection work. Cutting contact is never their first response. It is their last one. And by then, it is not abandonment. It is a boundary that simply arrived after years of arriving too late.
But here's the paradox that makes this so psychologically layered. The very sensitivity that makes these people extraordinary, the depth that allows them to love profoundly, to listen without judgment, to hold space for others with rare emotional intelligence, is the same sensitivity that makes certain relationships impossible to stay inside. They feel everything, which means they feel the subtle dismissals, the small but repeated moments of being minimized, the 1,000 quiet times they were almost seen, but not quite. Things other people brush off register in them like fractures. And so the more they care about a relationship, the more dangerous it becomes to stay when it's broken. Because for people who feel this deeply, a painful connection doesn't just sting, it saturates. It seeps into how they see themselves, how they sleep, how they move through their days. Their depth is their greatest gift, and in the wrong relationships, it becomes the source of their greatest pain. There's another dimension here that psychology rarely makes explicit. Consider two different people facing the same difficult relationship. One person, perhaps more emotionally avoidant by nature, learns to go numb. They stay, but they stop fully arriving. They protect themselves through distance while remaining physically present. The deeply empathetic person cannot do this. Half presence is not in their wiring. For them, it's everything or nothing, full connection or full withdrawal. Which is why, when they finally leave, they leave completely. And here is what that withdrawal often really is, beneath the surface. It's an act of identity reconstruction. Because many of these people have spent years living inside a role, the reliable one, the understanding one, the one who absorbs and never unravels. And roles, over time, become cages. Because no one is only one thing. No one is endlessly patient. Psychologists who study identity disruption and emotional exhaustion observe something consistent. This kind of withdrawal frequently precedes profound personal transformation. The person going quiet isn't falling apart. They're excavating, peeling back layers of who they performed themselves to be, and slowly, quietly, finding out who they actually are underneath all of it. Have you ever felt the specific weight of a relationship that was asking you to become smaller in order to stay inside it? Where you noticed, not dramatically, just honestly, that around certain people, you felt a kind of tired that rest couldn't fix. Most people have felt this. Very few name it out loud, because naming it feels like admitting something our culture has taught us to be ashamed of. That some connections cost more than they give. That loyalty has limits. That loving someone does not always mean staying near them. If you are someone who has cut people off and carried quiet guilt about it, sit with this for a moment. Protecting your peace is not the same as being cold. Removing yourself from what consistently drains you is not indifference. It is self-awareness, finally being honored. And choosing yourself after a long season of choosing everyone else is not cruelty. It is the beginning of something healthier. The people who disappear are not always running away from connection. Very often, they are running toward a version of life that has room for them in it. A version where they are not perpetually depleted, where their needs are not invisible, where love does not have to hurt to feel real. That is not broken. That is someone finally learning their own worth. We live in a culture that glorifies endurance, that treats staying in pain, in imbalance, in relationships that diminish you as somehow noble. But sometimes the most psychologically profound act of self-awareness is recognizing when something has genuinely ended, when a chapter has taken everything you had, and choosing, with grace and without bitterness, to close it. The people who cut everyone off are not always damaged. Sometimes they are simply done. Done with noise, done with performing, done with loving in a language no one around them ever learned to speak back. And in the quiet, they finally allow themselves, something extraordinary begins. Not emptiness, themselves. If you've ever felt exactly this, but never quite had the words for it, this channel was made for you. If that's the kind of content you've been looking for, subscribe and leave a comment below. Tell me, did this describe someone you know or someone you've been? I read every single one.